Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. As part of a Meteor edition. This audio podcast is part of a Biome bullet. This audio podcast is part of a Lobostics Phantom, and this audio podcast as part of a Storm Lobostics production. In this audio podcast, I look at a poster presentation from around 2019, looking at sort of collaborative poster presentation, and where the poster presentation had a collaboration between academia, an academic institution in the United Kingdom, and the social media platform, the Renal Patient Support Group, the RPSG. So the poster presentation looked at a need for healthcare scientists and educational support surrounding CKD, or chronic kidney disease, and looking at laboratory investigations and tests, and sort of summarizing polls through the some polls that had been part of the works through the social media platform, the RPSG. So a little bit of introduction in regard to CKD, looking at CKD, chronic kidney disease, and looking at models of care. So in regard to the intro, patient access, or healthcare service user access to information to information support to sort of supplement understanding of laboratory and test parameters has faced varying challenges owing to medical and scientific terminologies. Such terminology can be or is sort of everyday language for healthcare professionals communicating with each other. But when healthcare professionals sort of communicate with healthcare service users or patients, the medical terminology can become overwhelming. And so such concerns give a sort of a right to provision of advice, information, and sort of the sort of some of the healthcare literacy and language aspects surrounding healthcare and in amongst disease. And so a little bit now looking at CKD. So CKD is an irreversible long-standing condition where reduced renal function is reduced renal function is evident, and where the kidneys where renal pathophysiology is unable to filter blood as per normal physiology. And CKD literature varies in literature, where some authors or some works have informed that it is a major public health concern, and where others have where some other works some other literature, in amongst some of the literature, CKD is linked as a is not a primary condition, and so there can be considerable overlap between CKD, chronic kidney disease, and amongst symptomologies in amongst primary care where CKD where CKD where CKD is concerned. So there is a higher excuse me, there is in amongst the literature there is has been evidence that there's higher risk of dying from acute kidney injury than myocardial infarction and other primary health conditions, and due to increasing due to increasing so due to increasing due to increasing prevalences, incidences and prevalences, um, uh, and at the same time, creatinine or serum creatinine remains the sort of gold standard biomarker for renal function renal function. The estimated glomerular filtration rate, or EGFR, is also a calculation that allows a general evaluation of creatinine in blood and filtered over 24 hours. In amongst the poster presentation, there is sort of an overview of the different sort of CKD stages, CKD stages in context of severity and in context of classification, and where between CKD severity being CKD stages 1 through 5, and there between CKD stages 1 through 5, where in amongst CKD classification there is a a link to the estimated glomerular filtration rate and the sort of glomerular filtration rate. So in regard to sort of not the sort of new models of care, so healthcare scientists who tend to perform the laboratory investigations can provide specific education and guidance surrounding laboratory trends and sort of parameters, and when to screen for suspect or high risk patients for specific diseases, and prompt reference for treatment and referral, and thus shift healthcare and sort of help sort of shift sort of aspects of healthcare within aspects of healthcare within the National Health Service or NHS. At the same time, some key some sort of main drivers for change. So beyond electronic patient records, or EPRs, sort of the main drivers for new models of care sort of include number one, sort of a greater requirement for patient focused services. Number two, the need to embrace competitiveness, aspects of competitiveness and competitiveness and plurality of provision. Three, a requirement to reprofile the workforce to make it better suited suited in and around sort of aspects of tech. Some in regard to aspects of tech and modern modern ways of working, And number four, the need for the sort of definition sort of data to develop a framework in regard to efficiency and effectiveness. And five, sort of recognizing the status of our clinical services in regard to impact on healthcare service users, healthcare service users journey, leading to requirement for laboratory services to be sort of commissioned and delivered as part of integrated healthcare, and six, the need for the requirement for strong leadership. Um, so in regard to this works a little bit now in regard to in regard to the polls that were implemented through the social media through the social media platform, the Renal Patient Support Group, the RPSG. So the aims were to explore the perspectives regarding educational support surrounding CKD laboratory investigations and tests, and sort of the healthcare scientists' role from a sample of the RPSG. The research team carried out five polls for 6 months, for around 6 months, from around January 2018 to around July 2018, to help understand sort of healthcare communication technology sort of requirements and importance of healthcare scientists, educational support for laboratory tests and investigations. The objectives in around this were where as part of the as part of the polls, the objectives were to help answer the following questions. Number one, would you see a healthcare professional other than your own physician? Number two, how can health professionals or healthcare professionals better understand or appreciate being in a chronic illness? Number three, healthcare scientists access in primary care. Number four is in regard to sort of technology and usage. And number five, how likely are you to use future technologies for educational support from a healthcare scientist? So before going into the sort of analysis, part of the methodology, and some aspects in regard to the sort of ethics, some aspects in regard to the ethics, and then the analysis, a little bit in regard to some of the literature. So over the past decade, the healthcare sciences profession has been advocating an expansion in the role of the healthcare sciences from a purely sort of laboratory diagnostic to a more advice and educational focus, providing understanding of tests and analysis, tests and results, and sort of the impact in regard to in regard to laboratory investigations that healthcare service users may have. And so CKD patients often seek often sought to identify educational and or understanding of laboratory tests and investigations to support recommendations surrounding sort of the general sort of condition pathway. Um, Healthcare scientists at the same time have an ability tend to sorry healthcare scientists have an ability and capacity to extend sort of knowledge base surrounding diagnostics, to provide to provide understanding regarding laboratory investigations for healthcare service users. So healthcare scientists, amongst the literature have been amongst the literature has been has been informed that healthcare scientists have a sort of a unique sort of role. There is evidence to also suggest that more healthcare promotion in amongst communities can support the understanding of some of the complexities regarding laboratory investigations, health and disease. So in for example, a mixed method triangulated research approach, three academic institutions, two health departments, and two indigenous organizations collaborated to identify workforce capacity in amongst remote communities through an effort in regard to in regard to in regard to educational support for and amongst the in amongst this particular and specific collaboration, and a need was found to educate the educators in particularly in around the chronic care model, and in using a population health approach. One of the one of the one of the challenges uh, one of the challenges is uh, ensuring ensuring um, um, transparency in and around of providers roles, healthcare providers roles, and expectations regarding shared care. Defining roles and responsibilities would enhance the positive elements of collaborative interprofessional care and reduce misunderstandings regarding protocols, procedures, responsibility, and authority. So, in regard to the sort of methodology aspects of this particular works now. So there were uh, there were there were as informed excuse me, there were five polls that were carried out between between January 2018 and July 2018. However, the justification for the polls and in regard to a sample thus being through the through the RPSG platform. So previous investigations have used surveys and polls for polls of surveys and polls in around healthcare service users, CKD patients, and amongst the public. And these are investigations that sort of inspired some of the inspired implementation through the RPSG. And so it had been decided that had been decided between the sort of research team and the admin and the research team and the RPSG the RPSG administrators, that five short polls over 6 months, through the RPSG and through the RPSG being a closed social media platform, was sort of an initial way to sort of understand some perspectives from those from and amongst those of the and amongst those utilizing the social media platform. So a little bit of ethics aspects around this as well. So consideration for the need for ethics approval was made was made, and the Department of Health guidance, a Department of Health guidance, a Department of Health guidance was consulted, and where the Department of Health guidance in the main being a governance arrangements for research ethics committees document in regard a document from in and around and in regard to around 2012. Ethics committee approval was not required for this work. However, that being said, GDPR 2018, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation 2018 legislation was followed. The work aimed to obtain initial perspective from from a social media platform, and it was important to get a representation from various ethnicities using the RPSG, and the polls were pinned as sort of announcements at the top of the RPSG platform by the by the RPSG administration and moderating team, and over the planned duration. So in and around the polls development and implementation. So initial version of polls was piloted, and amendments were made to questions and phrasing. Potential respondents were informed of understanding for the poll, the anonymity of responses, and the ability to withdraw from the polls at any time. Any time was was highlighted, and the time frame for sort of responses for the polls was only limited to 6 months, and therefore a sample size calculation was not carried out. Instead, a target of 1,000 responses was set. Respondents were asked again. Number one, would you see a health professional other than your own physician? Number two, how can health professionals better understand or appreciate being in a chronic illness? Number three, if you had access to a healthcare scientist in primary care or community who could tell you about your investigations, would you access this service? Number four, number four, number four, was in regard to technology and usage, and number five was in regard to how likely are you to how likely are you to use future technologies for educational support from a healthcare scientist. So in around the analysis, just to inform listeners that the analysis around this is a sort of a sort of overview. There is a peer review and published works, a peer review and published works, where the where the analysis and around the analysis and different aspects of the works go into more detail. So a little bit around the analysis here, though, in as part of an overview. So 574 excuse me, 574 RPSG members participated in completing polls and representing in around just under 10% response rate. The respondents informed they would see a healthcare professional other than a physician as in around over 50%. And so when asked excuse, excuse me, when asked how health professionals could better understand or appreciate being in a chronic illness, communication was the most important in around 33%. In around 33%. Uh, when healthcare service user patients were asked if they had access to a healthcare scientist in amongst primary care, would they access this service? The respondents polled yes, and poll data informed in around 77%. In regard to a portal allowing access to in regard to this also in regard to as part of this as well as part of this a portal in regard to a portal allowing access to medical records and laboratory results or investigations, the as being the high as being sort of the highest one of the highest responses in around 26%. And when asked how likely are you able to use how likely would you use future technologies for educational support from a healthcare scientist, respondents polled high on access to a remote healthcare scientist from a computer or a computer or through a desktop through a desktop app, so that they could access from a desktop and from access from a desktop as opposed to restricted through through an app on a smartphone and the poll data informed in around 33%. So now in regard to some specific aspects around the discussion as part of this research poster presentation. So evidence indicates or informs a proportion of CKD patients or healthcare service users access online healthcare records, electronic patient records, intermittently but over extended periods, extended durations. The patterns of timing of use indicate strong healthcare service user healthcare service indicate strong healthcare service user or patient intrigue in detailed information such as test results and clinical letters. However, this does not immediately mean that healthcare service users or patients would automatically know what laboratory investigations mean, and thus health literacy health literacy had been documented, had been evidenced as still being an issue, an aspect of an issue. So healthcare service users with long-standing conditions sought to gain more background and understanding regarding health and well-being to take ownership of disease or conditions, and they also tend to do as they also tend to do this sort of faster than some of the very healthcare professionals who look after them through online means, and sort of additionally telehealth links for video consultations, imaging, and sort of laboratory data could also enable healthcare scientists to be involved in discussions with healthcare service users, patients, or carers more sort of remotely and digital sort of remotely and through excuse me, and through multidisciplinary team meetings, and this would be advantageous given the population is living longer. So in regard to sort of applications to practice or aspects of practice, so educating healthcare professionals about the importance of the healthcare service user role and how to sort of interact with healthcare service users is another important area of investigation. Evidence indicates that healthcare professionals using medical jargon without healthcare service users having knowledge in the initial instance would continue or will continue to act as sort of a hindrance to communicate. And what should happen over time are more health are more patient centric consultations where healthcare service users have a good sort of understanding of laboratory tests and investigations, owing to the length of time in in uh, in uh, in CKD, for example. The targeting thus targeting the attitudes of providers through potential solutions is important, so that the relationship or the association between the patients and between healthcare service users and healthcare providers is balanced and smarter. The polls conducted or carried had added value to an important topic, encasing healthcare scientists' involvement in the provision of education surrounding laboratory investigations and tests for CKD patients. Greater use of sort of skill mix will be uh, will be will be sort of important if, for example, UK healthcare is to offer CKD patients or healthcare service users a sort of choice. So the aim should be to equip healthcare service users with education and knowledge base to ensure they have a strong basis for shared decision making at all levels of care. Healthcare scientists who have trained to acquire variable skills across across practice and across specialties could perhaps apply educational base to support CKD patients in primary care, and this will bring a much required healthcare professional asset into primary care. More technology integration could also allow for this so for example online digital healthcare scientists or e-clinics with a healthcare scientist could be another progressive proposition, and where healthcare scientists could be involved online with healthcare service users or patients, providing basic understanding of investigations to prompt shared decision making. And so finally, some conclusions. So CKD healthcare service users or patients tend to see varying members of a multidisciplinary team at varying times, and can receive sort of misinterpreted information. Whilst information technology and exchange of laboratory investigations through electronic patient records has the ability has the ability for health professionals and patients to share care. They are still missed opportunities in primary care for the CKD population. CKD patients still require access to education surrounding laboratory investigation impact and result implications owing to issues that are owing to issues that are compounding in amongst literature that are linked in and around healthcare language and healthcare literacy. Healthcare scientists are and tend to be at the forefront on the very basis of uh, of uh, of investigations surrounding the whole pathway. Excuse me. Surrounding the whole pathway of the condition, and so prospectively, healthcare scientists in amongst the UK sort of nationally could be playing a more could be playing a sort of important roles in supporting education for CKD patients or recipients, and sort of providing smarter care to support sort of best practices. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast as part of a Meteor edition. This audio podcast as part of a Biome bullet. This audio podcast as part of a Lobostics Phantom. This audio podcast as a Storm Lobostics production. To inform again, the in on social media there will be there will be a list of references, a list of references that are a part of this audio podcast, and as part of this audio podcast, so listeners are more than welcome to check out the literature link to this works, link to this poster presentation, and a reminder again that this poster presentation was presented at the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, the BSLM, in 2019.